how do I get into calm more quickly?
Mm-hmm.
It's the entry point that needs to be speeded up. Once we're in the experience, then it slows down, of course. So it's just a process that I wrote for people with anxiety. It was a pathway that I found myself using a very holistic approach to reducing anxiety and panic in our lives. And I found that in my journey talking to people when I was in the process of having anxiety and panic attack, there was a lot of people like doctors saying, take this tablet, or psychologists saying, listen to this message. And what I discovered was it's not a one-step process. It's a holistic approach that needs to really integrate a very holistic approach to transformation. So it's what food are you eating? What time are you going to bed? How often are you using your phone? Are you meditating? Are you doing yoga? Are you going to the gym? Like all of these components, when put together, make a very rapid entry point into calmness quite quickly.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind. I am your host, Michael Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center. And as you know, if you've been tuning in for a while, every week, I have the privilege of being in conversation with individuals who have, in so many ways, taken back their own mind, opened up their own heart, and are making great difference on the planet at this time in human history and beyond. And so I welcome you in to this particular podcast. And guess what? Who I have with me right now, you can see him right on the screen. We have a Tom Cronin. I'll give you a little bit about him in case you don't know. He spent 26 years in finance markets as one of the Australia's leading bond and swap brokers. He discovered meditation in the early stages of his career when the anxiety and chaos he was experiencing hit a crisis point. And it completely transformed his world, both personally and professionally. The founder of the Stillness Project, I love that name. The founder of the Stillness Project, a global movement to inspire 1 billion people to sit in stillness daily. Tom is passionate about reducing stress and chaos in people's lives. His ongoing work in transformational leadership, coaching, and corporate training has seen him working with some of the top companies in the world, like Amazon, Oracle, Harvard Business School, Qantas, UBS, and Coca-Cola. He's spoken on stage at conferences and events like the Adnews Summit, Afest, Wanderlust, Mind Heart Connect. He's published 6 books and produced the hit film Portal that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Tom, welcome to Take Back Your Mind.
It's an honor and a joy to be here with you, Michael.
I gave a little bit of your background, but break down a little bit. You're in finance, you have meditation as a practice, and then there's a shift in your life in which you went from one level to another in terms of what you were doing humanly. Break that down a little bit.
Yeah, there was 3 shifts. The first one was the shift that happened to me when I entered into the finance industry. So if we go all the way back, 1987, it's the same year that Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, started his career at the age of 22. I walked into a trading room floor at the age of 19, just finished backpacking around the world, blew most of my money in Europe, and was about to start a career in journalism. But I had some financial challenges after spending all my money. So I decided to get a career in finance. And next thing, it's the late 80s, early 90s. And I swept into that culture, doing a lot of drugs, drinking, partying. And I was moved a long way from my what I call North Star, the path that I was meant to walk. And I got swept into that lifestyle. And what happened was I got a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, depression, self-loathing because of who I was becoming, the hedonistic lifestyle that I was living, and the detrimental impact that was having on my nervous system and my mind. And this dark night just sort of came across me over time, where I went into a deep spiral and eventually what became a full-blown nervous breakdown. And I was seeing psychologists, psychiatrists, put on medication, doctors, even having suicidal tendencies. And I had to leave work. I was having mental health leave, and I was in a really, really dark place. And that's when I found meditation, of all things, transcendental meditation. And that became a game changer for me. You know, I realized that there was everything that I was looking for in the drugs and the drinking and the partying was actually what I was finding in that transcendent experience. And that led me to actually change the way I was living and change my state of being. But I continued on in that career for quite some time because I had financial commitments and a family to feed. But eventually I realized that I had more to do in the world, and everything that I discovered in my darkness and in the transformation from that darkness, I was here to share that with the world. And that's, I guess, why we're here on this podcast interview today.
Oh, absolutely. So you started with transcendental meditation. Over the years, is that still your main go-to, or has it evolved to other aspects of meditation?
You know, it's been 28 years now since I started that day where I received my mantra and learned to meditate. And over that time, I've added many other layers to my, you know, transformational process. And I do ice baths, I do breath work, I do journaling, I do visualizations, I do gratitude, I do gym and walking meditations and all sorts of things. But I still have my core. And I find that that core of consistently daily transcending, that is, there's many different ways. And the film The Portal was all about that portal through from the world of duality, the world of thought, the world of feeling, the world of physical identity is a critical part of my daily experience. And so I find that the transcending meditation for me personally is one of the great gateways to getting into what we call in Sanskrit Turiya, the transcendent experience.
I think I got my mantra in 1975, transcendental meditation. And I think it was $25 at the time.
Oh, wow. It's a bit different these days.
Me and my mom.
That's so cool.
Yes, it was my foundational piece. And then I, kind of expanded and still use that, but I created my own way that I enter into the transcendent zone. But yeah, it's beautiful. Now, in terms of you were still in the business for a while as you were meditating. How would you describe conscious leadership as compared to normal leadership based on your understanding of the transcendent?
You know, everything we do is an extension and expression of our state of consciousness. And so in some degree, all leadership is conscious leadership, but it's just how conscious is it? It's degrees of consciousness. And we can have very limited degree of which consciousness means the degree of awareness, the degree of being mindful and aware of the existence that you are in and the existence that you're occupying around you and the influence you're having on the world around you. And so as I became more conscious, I found my leadership capabilities became better and greater. And that's an ongoing process. I'm still definitely in the process of evolving and growing and learning and still making mistakes and learning through those mistakes. But definitely I found that as I started to realize greater and greater knowledge, greater and greater capacity to share that knowledge, I decided at one point I needed to leave the world of finance and formalize my, I guess, influence that I was having on people. At that time, while I was still a broker, it was just like at dinner parties or at the kids' soccer game when I was talking to the parents, or hanging out with the mates watching the footy. And it wasn't really a very formalized, effective way of me sharing the knowledge. So I went into a more structured, which was teaching meditation, running retreats and coaching and doing keynote presentations.
Beautiful. If I can see that transition. So, but at the time you were blending business and spirituality, kind of. You had a synergy with that was concerned. And then eventually you just left that all together to fulfill your calling.
Yeah, I just felt, there's a Sanskrit phrase called ichi sachi, which many of the listeners will understand. I'm sure, Michael, you've had this many times in your life. Ichi sachi is the recognizing of a deep knowingness within your being to be able to do more than what you're doing. And it almost starts as a little ache. It's a little discomfort. And it's actually a beautiful mechanism that the divine intelligence created to compel, propel, and impel us forward to doing more, to impacting more, to utilizing our gifts and our capacity. And if we ignore ichi sachi, it actually becomes quite full blown. It can actually become a bit more chaotic in our life, where the universe is trying to say, hey, You need to go in this direction, and you're underutilizing the gifts that we've bestowed you. So I had a lot of ichi-sachi coming through me for a while, and it became almost like a depression while I was a broker. I felt like this deep discomfort, and I was so afraid of leaving because the financial security, and I had a family to feed and financial commitments with mortgages and things. But the universe kind of just said, you just don't get it. We're going to make the jump out of this plane, and I don't know if I've got a parachute on or not, but I'm just going to go anyway and see what happens.
I know that I had that, when I was director of training of prayer ministry, worldwide prayer ministry. I was a faculty member at a school of higher consciousness, and I was doing my own private clientele every day, and I thought I was doing okay. However, I did get the inner compulsion that I was supposed to do something else. I didn't want to start a community consciously, but I kept getting nudged that way, and I was actually told that if I did not do what I promised to do, that I didn't need to be on the planet anymore. I was told that very inwardly. And then everything started shrinking where I was. And then I had a vision of Agape International, a full-blown vision of what I was to do. And I came back and I said, I'm going to be quitting. Train my replacement. I won't leave a day before he's trained. And I'm going to start a community. And I leaped without a net. I didn't have any big savings, or I had children to feed and family and the whole thing. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I let go, and I didn't know how to do what I was supposed to do, but what I needed to know showed up when I needed to know it. And that was over 38 years ago. And so I know what that is, that you have to leave the net.
Yeah. I love our dear friend, I'm sure she's a friend of yours as well, Gabby Bernstein, has a book, The Universe Has Your Back. And, it's so hard to trust that, isn't it? But looking back, all those moments of fear and doubt, we all landed in some way, shape or form, and we all survived, and we managed to get through, and things, it's almost like the universe is not going to make it easy for you. It kind of wants to test your capacity, your conviction, your willingness. It doesn't just pave the pathway forward you with rose petals and gold. It makes it a little bit challenging just to see if you've got that real gumption. And I have started to trust more and more that the discomfort will be there at every leap into the next level of unknown, and to consistently learn to just trust the universe. It's got you, it's supporting you, it's caring for you.
Right. We used to have a statement that says something along the lines of the universe doesn't call the qualified, the universe qualifies the called. And so when you answer the call, you get qualified. You go through whatever you have to go through to be pruned and to eliminate the debris, purify your motivation, so that you become qualified as you answer. You don't come in perfect, but you get perfected along the way. And sometimes it's challenging, it's difficult, it's heart-wrenching, it's dark night of the soul at times. And eventually you look back and you're not that same person, but you become qualified to do the work that you promised you would do before you even took this incarnation.
It's really interesting, isn't it? We tend to often want to think we need to be qualified to the nth degree before we can take that step. But the qualifying actually, as you say, happens after you've taken that step in some degree. You've got to have this sort of degree of qualification to be able to take the step, but then most of the transformation happens after you've taken the step and you're thrown into that deep end.
Absolutely. Now you talk about the 7 stages of consciousness, and I want you to break those down for me, and get a sense of how they differ from each other and what they actually mean to us in terms of our growth, development, and unfoldment.
Yeah, look, the first starting point is the macro perspective that we're currently in an era of time recognized by the Vedic seers and pundits of what's called Kali Yuga, an age of ignorance, where we're ignoring fundamental aspects of our own true nature, which causes so much of the chaos, the suffering, the conflict in the world. What's following on from the Kali Yuga definitively is an era of time called Sat Yuga, an age of wisdom, where the innate wisdom that's embodied and lived and breathed within us is being realized by each and every human being. And that's the discerning difference between the Kali Yuga and the Sat Yuga. Now, when we break that down onto the micro level and we take the individual of each human being, which determines whether it's Kali Yuga or Sat Yuga, by the number of people that have realized these states of consciousness. And so it recognizes in the Vedic worldview that each individual has access to 7 states of consciousness, but most of us are predominantly only accessing and experiencing 3 out of those 7, which means we're leaving 4 on the table that we haven't yet realized as our true potential. And so unrealized true human potential is the cause of so much of the world's suffering. And the first 3 states of consciousness that each person cycles in and out of on a daily basis is the thinking state, which is where we're awake, and predominantly all of our thoughts revolve ultimately around ourselves. It's not to be rude, but quite narcissistic to some degree, because even though we might think about our kids or the poor kid overseas that might be suffering and we want to donate some money to them, but predominantly most of our thoughts are our ambitions, our fears, our phobias, throughout the night, in the day, and that's the thinking state. Then we go into deep sleep where we become unconscious. Each night we drop into a state where we don't even exist. We have no awareness about our own identity. And this is something we go into every single night when we drop into deep sleep. And then we go into dream state around 2, 3 in the morning. And that's when that narcissistic, individualized, separated, segregated self starts to reemerge, where we're thinking again about ourselves, and all of our dreams have us in the middle of it, and we obsessed about our own identity, and that comes up in our dreams, and then we come out of dream state and back into thinking state. So 99.999% of the world still at this point just move through those 3 states. Now, what happens in deeper transcending meditations or other things, like maybe it's breath work or plant medicine, other whatever tools people are using to get beyond the thinking mind and yet still be awake and conscious. This is what we call Turiya in Sanskrit, the 4th state, where now we have awake state where we're conscious, but we're not thinking. So there's no individual sense of I. There's just amness or beingness, or as Ram Dass would call it, loving awareness. Mm-hmm. And so getting into this transcendent experience, I found Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation one of the most effective portals or methods to get to that realm where I'm awake and not thinking, and other people have other tools or devices that they use. The reality is it's there. It's just, how do we get there? Now, when we go into Turiya, the 4th state, and then back into thinking, the 1st state, and back into the 4th state, and back into the 1st state, consistently morning and evening on a daily basis, it's this repetition and consistency that enables the weaving of the 1st and the 4th together, like getting a needle and thread and weaving it into the fabric, where the fabric's indelibly changed. Now we have conscious awareness. We call it Sakshi Kutastha, the silent witness, witnessing the thinking state. So now we have the 5th state of consciousness where the 1st and the 4th state come together to create this beautiful experience where there's Tom, the identity, and also the witnessing of Tom, the identity, happening simultaneously at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is called cosmic consciousness, the 5th state of consciousness. And then when we purify the vessel of deep samskaras, your traumas, your fears, your phobias, all of those embodied deep layers that have been trapped in the vessel through whatever modalities we're using to purify, we start to get to a capacity to start witnessing the world outside of us and start seeing it beyond the form and the phenomenon that it's perceived to be, and start seeing the divine within the form and the phenomenon. This is a very advanced state to get into. We call God consciousness, or what I call divinity consciousness. And that's the ability to witness the divine in the play of life, otherwise known as Leela, the dance of the divine.
Yes, yes.
And it becomes a magical experience where you're mesmerized by the beauty around you at all times through the portal of the senses. And then the final state to get into, which is a very rare state, not many people currently on the planet are accessing, what we call unity consciousness, the 7th state of consciousness, where the I that is identified or occupied within the vessel has become so translucent or melted away that what happens is, what we experience is an enlightened state of non-duality, where there's no longer two, which is the I, the subject, and the object that's being observed. There's just amness through all experience, and it's a unified experience. And we're starting to see and hear a lot more people talking about non-duality, talking about emptiness in Buddhism and non-dualism. And we've got some prolific non-dualists in the world sharing some incredible knowledge like Rupert Spira and I think Eckhart Tolle and Muji and Adyashanti, where we're starting to get more of this incredible knowledge and experience being shared across the planet, which is very rare, but I think hopefully we'll see more of that happen as time goes on.
Yeah, this it's like seeding consciousness, knowing about these 7 states. That must affect some way when people are meditating. If they just know about these states, how do you think it affects a person's deepening their meditation?
It affects two things. It definitely affects your meditation in that, in fact, in some respects, the transcending can still happen in meditation, but it's happening outside of meditation as well. It's like the wave has realized, oh, I'm a wave, but I'm actually always the ocean. And I don't need to transcend to become the ocean because I've actually already realized that I'm always the ocean and I'm never not the ocean, whether I'm a wave or not. So it becomes quite embodied. But what's more important is when someone, what it seems to be anyway, and I have waves of experience of the unity consciousness and a lot of time back into Tom, the identity. But certainly what I tend to find is when we get more and more of that experience of a unified state, the things that we create and the things that we do tend to include the uplift of the whole. And that's birds, amoebas, bees, humans, universality, because we experience the whole as us. So it's like the hammer in the hand's not going to hit the toe because that's part of the body. It's like one whole body. And why would I want to harm or hurt an extension of me? So my goal is to hopefully inspire as many people on the planet to get into unity consciousness, because by default, they'll start creating things, doing things, building businesses that elevate and support the whole, because the whole is them. They're experiencing themselves not as an individualized, separated, segregated individual, but more of a collective experience.
Right.
And this probably is why I inspired Agape, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I had a powerful experience and I could feel my oneness with all of life. Even the lint on the rug was luminous with life, everything. And I could never get back in the box. I was in college. I was on track to go to medical school, and I had this awakening, and I could never get back in. And that's when I began to discover the Dhammapada, the Upanishads, the mystical teachings of Jesus, and I saw the correlations between all of them. Got my transcendental meditation mantra, but for a long period of time I was unintegrated. I mean, I was in this expanded state, but I wasn't any earthly good. So it took a period of time to integrate, so that I would honor Michael, and not just leave him just out there doing nothing and just be in this expanded state. So I'm listening, I'm hearing and appreciating exactly what you're saying, so that there became more embodiment, more integration, then more actually bringing the expanded state into time, into what I do. And ultimately there was counseling, spiritual counseling, workshops, and then ultimately the birth of this community, which is that's our primary vibration, unconditional love, or that unitive consciousness in which we see all as one, which, as you said, basically with that awareness, we're not going to go bomb somebody because they're us. We're not going to shoot somebody or kill somebody because they have a different culture, different color of skin, or whatever the case may be, because we're all emanating from the same source. We are each other. I used to love what Ram Dass would say. He would say, we're all God in drag,
Yeah, so true. And, traditionally in the past, what used to happen was people would access these states, but because the world was so unavailable for this knowledge and these experiences, then they had to live extremely reclusively in mountains and ashrams. And it never really veered outside the walls of these ashrams and monasteries. People would get into these states. But it seems just in the last few decades that the world is starting to open up to receive this level of knowledge and information, which is why your Agape Center, which I've been to in LA and enjoyed incredible experience there in LA, people flooding into wanting more of this information. So that's inspiring people who, like yourself, have these beautiful, mystical, ethereal, universal experiences, but then go into action and embody that into movement and to doing and to bringing something to the world. And that really excites me where we're at now. We're at this incredible junction point where we've still got enough darkness and suffering to make us relevant to bring the message to the masses, and a masses that's ready to actually hear it, which is really a beautiful meaning point that we're getting to right now on the planet. We're not there yet, but we've got a bit of way to go.
Oh, we got a way to go, but it's sweet to look at the evolution of the consciousness, because you go back 40 years ago, a lot of these things were woo-woo, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And now it's like science. You got epigenetics, you got quantum physics, you have all of these things that are beginning to describe this expanded consciousness from a scientific point of view, that science is now using a different language with describing the same thing. And it's not woo-woo anymore. It's like so many people are coming into this, and they may be neophytes, they may not be practitioners yet, but they're curious and they're studying and they want to be a part of it. So definitely it portends for me to be optimistic. And I think we're in the last bits of the Kali Yuga. I mean, I think that there's some remnants of the next stage already happening here on the planet.
Simultaneously, I agree, 100%. And it's a gradual. It's not like a light switch that's on or off. It's a dimmer switch that fades from dark to light. And I think we're definitely switching the nozzle. And we've got a little bit of darkness, and we're definitely getting a little bit of light happening simultaneously.
Right. So even though we can see a lot of polarization and we can see a lot of hate and wars, that seems to be the like a dying of a paradigm that doesn't want to die. So it's really loud, you know. And
it's the last clutch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm the ego. I'm it. I'm the top of the world. I own everything, you know. But it's people are very quick to discover that all that stuff the ego wants doesn't satisfy. You know, you can get more and more and more of whatever it is you think you need, but it doesn't satisfy you. Only you becoming more you satisfies. And people are quickly learning that, or learning. I'll put it like this: they're learning that lesson more quickly.
Yeah, it's insatiable ego, isn't it? It will never have enough. It never is full.
Money, whatever it is, it just won't have enough of it.
It's interesting. I got a call from a gentleman who had sold his business for $350 million. And he had a beautiful wife and 3 kids. And he had bought a beautiful palatial mansion on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. It'd be your utopian dream for most people. And he'd ticked every box you could tick for what we are perceived to be. If you get something, you should be fulfilled. And someone said to him, you need to talk to Tom, because he contacted me and he was riddled with anxiety. He was deeply, deeply depressed. He said, I'm so lost. I don't know where to go. I've done everything that the world told me I should do to get fulfilled. And I'm miserable. What am I supposed to do now? And I said, well, it's time we go inward. And his ego couldn't get any more, and yet he couldn't find happiness. So that's the journey we're on right now.
But fortunately, he found you, because he could have gone into using all the anesthesias of the world, you know, intense pleasures and alcohol and drugs, and you know, to try to fill that imagined hole within him. Yeah. You know, I was just counseling a young man who he just walked away from a major business that he started. You know, he's a young man, millions of dollars were being thrown at him because he developed this new AI situation. And at the same time, he was having this cosmic awakening. And he expanded into this cosmic consciousness and walked away from the business, took nothing from it. So his family, everybody's so concerned about him because he left millions of dollars, and the patent is worth billions, on the table. He didn't see any value in it when he woke up, you know. And so now he's about to release something else, but he's having different structures around it. So it's actually being built to actually serve humanity rather than just to make profit, you know. And he's having different kind of people around him rather than the other people that he had. But he had an authentic awakening, and he's a genius. And so the same thing, he was looking at all this money and he was thinking about buying a mansion and all this stuff. And every time he got close to doing all of that, he didn't get any satisfaction.
Yeah.
He said, this is all illusion. This is all temporary.
Mm.
And like your friend, but he left that.
Yeah.
And now he's going to do something else, but he's going to have a different
Yeah.
structure built into the business plan. Built into the business plan, as I was helping him, is going to be what his give back is. Why is he doing this? It's not to build widgets. It's actually to use this abundance for the betterment of humanity. That satisfies him more. Yeah.
There's a great brains trust on the planet currently creating a movement of discussion around game B, where they look at game A being the current game, which is a win-lose paradigm, and it's a finite game that has an end point to it, and we're getting closer and closer to that end point. Even the doomsday clock moved closer and closer to midnight just recently. But game B is a win-win paradigm where everything that we do is supporting and elevating and enhancing the collective, the whole. And obviously people in game B are in a state of consciousness to play a game B game. And the point of game B is it's an infinite game. So the longer we play the game, the better the world's going to be. But we can only be in game B if we've got states of consciousness that want to play in game B and play a game B game. So people can just go to game B wiki, WIKI, and they'll start finding more information about game B and even start joining the conversation around how do we build a community and a vision for what a game B world looks like. Let's just call it Satyuga on an enlightened planet, because there's no political party that is working towards building an enlightened planet. There's no business currently that's building a business to support an enlightened planet. And so we don't really have a North Star because there's no one really coordinating that movement. And it's kind of like a hodgepodge collective of people thinking, wonder what that planet would look like if we were like that. So there's some really great, brilliant minds. Daniel Schmachtenberg is one of them, who was in our film, that are starting to develop a conversation and a community around that. Because if we don't start it now, then how are we going to get there?
Well, absolutely. At this stage, how would you describe an enlightened planet? What would be some of the descriptions?
Yeah, I think my vision for what it would look like will be, certainly we wouldn't be finding any conflict based upon someone else's religion or someone else's race. That would be, or someone else's gender. We would experiencing the transcendent of, this is a unified experience that I'm having with not just other humans, regardless of what they look like or what their sort of political or religious persuasion is, but there's a greater level of harmony. We have a lot less conflict, if any conflict whatsoever. We have a greater appreciation of the human position on planet Earth, where we've got a greater sense of equilibrium with our position with the bees, with the amoeba, with the soil, with the fungi.
We need the bees.
Yeah, we need the bees, right? We need the fungi. Try and live without that stuff, and it's not going to work out well for us. We're almost in all sorts of bother just around our soil, let alone the bees. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more appreciation of the human's role, and oh, hang on a sec, we're actually part of an ecosystem that we need to appreciate and understand, and that comes experiential. I think we're going to see a very different structure in the education system, in the health system. Imagine a planet of people where they realize the empowerment of their own health and vitality without depending on Coca-Cola or McDonald's, when we're no longer slaves to the media campaigns. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting time. I think we're going to see a paradigm shift that's going to be brutal for some people. If your businesses depend upon getting people to buy things that aren't healthy for them, then that might change quite quickly when we get more conscious. And so I think we're going to see some really big shifts, and it's going to be really exciting because it's just going to take a shift in consciousness to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I was a friend of mine who passed over a couple of years ago was a West African shaman, Malidoma Some. Maybe you've heard of him. Anyway, he had two great initiations. One when he was a teenager, and in that particular tribe, when the mother is 7 months pregnant, she comes to the community, and the Sankofa, the medicine man, channels the baby that's in the womb, and the baby shares the name and why the baby has taken an incarnation. And then the community's job is to make sure the baby, as the person grows, never forgets who they are and why they came here. Now, his name was Malidoma Some, which meant the bridger of two worlds, because when he was a young boy, he was kidnapped by the Catholic Church, and taught Western concepts of Christianity, not necessarily teachings of Jesus, but Christianity. And he escaped when he was a teenager, but he couldn't understand the nuance of what was happening in his community because he had missed his initiation. So anyway, when he went through the initiation, he was in his mother's womb and remembered that his name was Malidoma Some, the bridge of two worlds. He was to be kidnapped to understand the Western way of thinking so that he could go teach. So he ended up getting, a bachelor's, a couple of masters, a couple of PhDs to teach this unified consciousness to Westerners. But it would have never happened if he hadn't been kidnapped. But the other point I wanted to make was, as an adult, he went through an initiation as an elder. He had to put mud on his body, couldn't bathe for like 30 or 40 days, meditation. After a couple of weeks, he could hear the language of the animals and the bees, and he understood them. And then Mother Earth spoke. And Mother Earth said that she had entered into another phase of consciousness, and she was waiting for humanity to catch up. That those that do the inner work, that catch up, will go through this particular stage easier than those who are holding on to the hard, fast, ego-driven consciousness. But he talked about the earth itself was conscious.
Yeah, wow.
And the vibration of the earth was quickened. And that a lot of people's anxiety has something to do with the fact that they're not keeping up with the progression of the universe and the progression of the planet, you see. So I think it's in tune with what you're saying here.
It's interesting, isn't it? Do humans, I always wondered about this, are humans creating the vibration on the planet, or is the vibration of the planet changing the human's vibration? It's a really fascinating phenomenon. I think there's a lot in what you're just saying there. It really makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. So someone just starting meditation, what are some things you could tell them to at least stay committed? Don't just give up if they feel nothing's happening. What would you say to a newbie?
I think definitely explore different modalities of meditation. Don't put them all in one bucket, which is I need to stop thinking or I need to empty the mind. That's a very difficult pathway to getting into a state of meditation. I found for me personally, that was almost near impossible trying to do that, particularly when I had anxiety and panic attacks. I found for me personally that the mantra-based meditation, the mantra being a beautiful primordial vibration that I received from a teacher, making the pathway into that quietness much more accessible. But to do your research and shop around and firstly find a technique that's going to work for you to actually be able to sit and find deep quietness in those moments, and to at least allocate, I would suggest minimum 5 to 10 minutes to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But what we generally recommend is finding a teacher, learning a technique from a teacher or a center, whether it's online or in person, where you've got that ongoing support and guidance. Because when we start learning to meditate, your life is going to start changing. That's the whole point of meditating. And having someone to support you and guide you, and this is something we generally offer on a weekly basis, anyone that learns with us, whether it's on Zoom or in weekend workshops in person, that they get access to our weekly ongoing support system through the Zoom calls. And I think obviously at Agape, you've got a great support system for your community as well. So I think community is a big part of it, because outside of the community of that teacher and the teachings of that teacher and that tradition, you're going to just be talking about elections and tornadoes and who's winning the football or the baseball. And so generally most conversations are going to be quite menial and day to day. So having a community where you can have some ongoing support and communication, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I like what you just said. Explore, find the technique that works for you, have a teacher, and have a community that helps support your moments of when you're uncommitted. I've said over the years that authentic spiritual community grants you immunity from the lower frequencies of life. So community is extremely important.
I love that. Community, say it again, community, something immunity.
Authentic spiritual community grants you immunity.
Grants you immunity.
From the lower frequencies of life. You're in a robust, supportive vibe that assists you and buoys you even when you can't do it for yourself. So it's very important.
Yeah, I love that line. Can I borrow that?
Borrow it, please.
Communities have stood the test of time. If you look at church communities, it's something that congregation is such a powerful thing. And I think in the spiritual community, which is kind of I think it's the adaptation and the morphing of a lot of religious community, it still should be preserved. I think there's something really powerful about the essence of congregation and community, whether it's in a church or in a spiritual community, either or, whether it's we've got a beautiful, they play the djembe, bongo drumming. It's a drumming community here in Sydney. And it's, people want to be part of a collaborative, collective experience now. And I think that's a big part of where we should be going with our spiritual practice as well.
Absolutely. When I travel around, people come up to me and they say, "Oh my God, you got me through COVID," because we were online, "You got me through COVID. I didn't know what to do." And then I started tapping into the community and I got my confidence back. I knew I was going to make it. I got deeper into my practice. Yeah, community is extremely important. Let's pivot to one of your books, Deeper, Faster, Calm. Is that what it's called?
Faster, Deeper, Calm, yeah.
Faster, Deeper, Calm. Those are interesting words put together. Faster, deeper, calm.
Yeah.
Break that like down.
Antithesis, right?
Yeah.
Fast, calm, quick, get it now. We're in a world that we want to move with that world. And that world is quickening, like you said before. It's quickening, and there's no doubt about it. Everything is quickening. And our need for fulfillment is quickening as well. So when we're in stress states, it's hard for us if it's going to take a methodology 3 weeks before you start noticing a difference. If it takes a long time before we start to see some identifiable change, then people generally give up on things very quickly, and they'll move to something that will give them a more quantifiable, more quicker experience. And that's what we're looking for. So part of this is, how do I get into calm more quickly?
Mm-hmm.
It's the entry point that needs to be speeded up. Once we're in the experience, then it slows down, of course. So it's just a process that I wrote for people with anxiety. It was a pathway that I found myself using a very holistic approach to reducing anxiety and panic in our lives. And I found that in my journey, talking to people when I was in the process of having anxiety and panic attack, there was a lot of people, like doctors saying, take this tablet, or psychologists saying, listen to this message. And what I discovered was, it's not a one-step process. It's a holistic approach that needs to really integrate a very holistic approach to transformation. So it's, what food are you eating? What time are you going to bed? How often are you using your phone? Are you meditating? Are you doing yoga? Are you going to the gym? Like, all of these components, when put together, make a very rapid entry point into calmness quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Faster, deeper, calm.
Yeah, it's a bit cheesy, I know, but
no, it's catchy because they seem conflicting, but you created a synthesis out of them to go into deeper states of meditation, to achieve a level of calmness, even in the midst of the temporary, the transitory, or challenges, which is beautiful. Everybody's seeking that. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about The Portal, the movie. This is something you put together, right?
Yeah, I was very inspired after watching The Secret, which you obviously know very well. So The Secret did something that blew me away, because it brought a very esoteric subject, which was very unheard of pretty much in the world at that point in time, which is the law of attraction and the law of magnetization. And they managed to make it a very much a household phenomenon. They penetrated the households of the world with the film and the book all over the world. And what I felt was missing from that was, they didn't quite give us the how. Like, I felt meditation was part of the how. And I wanted to follow on from The Secret and make a film that had the same level of success, because I wanted to impact as many people as they did, with the idea that we can transform ourselves out of crisis, no matter what your background, no matter what your race, no matter what your experience has been. Everyone has the ability for alchemy. And I wanted to showcase that using a particular method called meditation. And I know there's many other methods that can do that as well, but I wanted to showcase the power of meditation to move us out of crisis. So we interviewed and found 6 very rich and powerful global stories of individual crisis that they'd used meditation to transform. So it's a very moving film and a very unique film in the way it's shot and filmed. And we embed that on a global crisis, looking at humankind's crisis that we're facing. We're walking closer and closer to the cliff. And can we have a collective transformation by shifting our consciousness as well? So the film was part of that global movement I have within the Stillness Project to inspire 1 billion people to meditate daily.
And they can still watch that anywhere, right?
Yeah, we've got it on our website at the moment. We're open to offers. So Netflix, if you're listening in, give us a shout. We're at the moment it's on our website where people can go and watch it. We're gifting it to the world at the moment. It's been quite a journey, probably one of the toughest things I've ever done financially, energetically, and on all levels. So that was a big learning. Interestingly, that making a film about meditation was one of the most stressful things I've ever done.
Antithetical.
Yeah, totally.
I understand. I was in the secret. I was in the secret.
That's right. I know.
And the secret, I called it a Trojan horse to go into society and in a catchy kind of way, have people understand that they're not bound by their conditions or their past or circumstances. They can actually begin to see their life at a much higher way of living. And we just used certain things that were kind of even mundane in the world to catch people's attention to realize they can change their consciousness. I mean, it wasn't my film, but I was one of the featured teachers in it.
That's right.
That movie still has legs. People are seeing it for the first time now. Many people, some of the young people, and that they're entering now into the spiritual walk to learn how to meditate after watching that. So they're going to bump into the portal.
Let's hope so. We want to have legs as well. So that's
because we do want over 1 billion people meditating, becoming still. You know about or have talked about the percentage of people on the planet that come into a certain state of consciousness would be kind of like a tipping point.
Yeah.
For humanity to actually, pivot from self-destruction.
I'd love to think it's going to start from the top down, but I think it's got to start from the bottom up. But I do wonder, out of the 225 presidents and prime ministers of every country on the planet, how many of them sit in deep stillness and meditation on a daily basis. I don't know if there's any at this point, certainly none that I've seen and become aware of, but I think that would be a really exciting proposition to have every prime minister and president of every country to be meditating on a daily basis.
That would be something. But as you said, it probably will have. I know Nelson Mandela meditated,
Yeah.
I met him and I know Bishop Tutu was deeply into meditation, as a priest, but he, worked with Mandela. But yeah, I think it's going to come from the bottom up. I think it's going to be the masses that begin to wake up and discover these principles and these practices. And perhaps the politicians will catch up, because, a lot of the politicians and the potentates around the world are so ego-driven for pseudo power that's very difficult for them to even, the best they want to do is have a photo op at a church. We went to church today on Sunday, but to actually practice the teachings of Jesus, or actually practice the teaching of Gautama the Buddha or whatever. Yeah. I don't know if there's that many out there doing that, as you said,
We've got a ways to go, but we're getting there. It's interesting, only in the last 12 to 24 months, seeing this trickling up into organizations as well. I've worked with Amazon, Oracle, Coca-Cola.
I saw that. That was great.
Harvard Business School. So, we're seeing it's not like they're becoming enlightened companies and, the masses aren't enlightened either. So we're all on this journey together. But definitely we're starting to see some cracks appearing in the calcification and the resistance to doing things differently. So it's exciting. There's change happening.
Are you teaching them meditation and stillness? When you're involved with these corporations, are you teaching the executives how to meditate, how to be still? Is that that's what they're bringing you in for?
Definitely not the executives yet. That's, again, like we're talking about, it's trickling up. So what the executives want us to do, people like myself, is to come in and teach the workers how to meditate. And that's partly because they can see that the stress that's happening in the workplace is causing impairment of their bottom line, and they want their business to be better. So whatever their motivation, the fact is that we're seeing some degree of change happening. So I've been teaching meditation in a lot of these organizations at their conferences and with their staff, but more at a grassroots level still at this stage.
Yeah, I found the same thing, that there's a productivity that comes from the workers when they're less stressed. So I've been called in many times to teach them to meditate, teach them how to do visioning and things like that. And they become more joyful inside, more expansive, and they become more productive. But many times, as you say, that the people at the top aren't necessarily doing that, but they are aware of the bottom line if their staff is doing it. And so it's an interesting dynamic that it will come from what appears to be the bottom up.
Yeah.
And ultimately mighty change will take place. It's beautiful. So we're in the middle of that.
Yeah. There's a 10,000 number, the number of 10,000, and that is 10,000 is the presidents and prime ministers of all the countries, the head of all the universities, the head of all the secondary schools, the head of all the banks, the head of all the media companies, and the head of all the pharmaceutical companies. So when you
That's a big one right there.
Yeah. So when these are all, there's about 10,000 at the moment that 10,000, and that's the head of the CDC, the FDA, the UN, the WHO. When you put all of those people together, it creates a group of about 10,000. Now that 10,000 pretty much pulls the strings and orchestrates nearly everything that's going on the planet.
It's an invisible corporatocracy.
Yeah.
But if we can imagine for a moment all of them sitting in the stillness, they'd have a change of character.
That's my mission and
vision. A change of motivation. Yeah. And then there'll be great shifts in policies and protocols. And then the enlightened world that we're envisioning will begin to kind of create itself around that vibration. And this is, so we want them to be curious.
Curious is good. Curious is good.
Why are you so calm in the midst of that challenge?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave us with? I know you have the Faster, Deeper, Calm book, and you've written 6 books, I think, right? About 6?
Yeah. The Portal book came out with a film, so that was a bit like The Secret. It came together as a sort of a package. But yeah, I think the main thing is just letting everyone know that it's going to be a bumpy ride going forward. There's going to be challenging weather conditions. There's going to be challenging financial situations. There's going to be potential conflict globally, which we're already seeing the early stages of. However, one thing we know is that we all have solace. We'll have a sanctuary of peace inside of us. And we can't rely and depend on the outside world to be peaceful for us to find peace. We have to find an equanimity and a peace that is the essence of who we are. It's the core of who we are. And the key is not trying to be peaceful. The key is finding the part of you that is already and always will be peaceful, regardless of circumstance and situation. And this is what we call being or presence, or as Ram Dass would say, loving awareness. And connecting to that part of us is going to be the thing that's going to provide you with great capacity to move through any challenging times that come ahead.
Absolutely. You said that wonderfully and beautifully, and I know that all of these beings that are tuning in are inspired by that. How can they be in touch with you?
I love hearing from people on my Instagram. I respond to all my messages, so by all means reach out to me at Tom Cronin, just one word, TomCronin. And my website is Tom Cronin as well, tomcronin.com. So I'd love to hear from people, and if there's any way I can support them with my retreats or with my coaching or with my meditation courses, I'm here to support them in any way, shape, or form.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on Take Back Your Mind. So I would ask you this question, but I already know the answer. You know, when you need to take back your mind from the chaos of the world, what do you do? And I know what you're going to say. So, but say it anyway.
Well, I just generally eat a burger and a pizza. No, definitely sit in stillness, in meditation, finding your meditation practice, and allow every day at least some window of time where you're not absorbing information, where you're not engaging with the world, you're not in duality, and just give yourself that gift to yourself. As Jesus said, be still. And it's such a wonderful thing to just allow that time each day to sit in some solitude and silence and stillness with the practice.
Absolutely. I say, don't leave home without it.
Yeah, totally.
Tom, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolute joy and pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Absolutely. God bless. Hey, everyone, that's Tom Cronin. And you now know how to find him. You know how to get his book. You know how to get the movie, The Portal. Let's all watch it and let it impact our consciousness in a very powerful and magnificent way. Peace and blessings, everyone. Peace and blessings, everyone. This is our moment in the Take Back Your Mind podcast, in which we get to practice a modicum of meditation. I've said over the years, don't leave home without it. Don't walk out of your house without some sense of stillness and quietude that you get from just being still. Just being still and having an intention to expand your awareness in this infinite field of divine consciousness. So we're going to do that for a few moments right now. I invite you to have your feet placed firmly on the ground unless you're in a full lotus position, and have your hands facing upward as a sign of receptivity, thumb, forefinger touching as a sign of transcending ego perception. Put your tongue at the roof of your mouth so that the energy that is circulating up the spine and through the different chakras has a greater sense of connection. Close your outer eyes. Be aware of your heart space, your throat, space between the eyebrows, the space at the top of your head. Just be aware. Now establish an intention to wake up to your glorious nature. That you may be a wave on this infinite ocean, but you're also the ocean. Establish an intention to wake up. And then subtly begin to feel the feeling of your intention. So the words might be, I'm intending to wake up to my glorious nature. As we sit with it, a feeling may emerge. I want you to place your attention on the feeling of your intention. Your attention is embracing your intention and the subsequent feeling tone of your intention. Be still, present, and observe with attention the feeling of your intention to wake up. Be still. You are the observer. You're witnessing your thoughts, the breath, your intention, and you're catching the feeling of your intention. Just another few seconds. And we enter into a field of gratitude now, dynamic thanksgiving and appreciation that we exist at all. In this consciousness of gratitude, we become available to more good than we could possibly imagine. Give thanks. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me and so many others in these few moments of meditation. You have no idea the difference you have made in the community of your body temple and in the worldwide global community because of our interconnection and quantum entanglement we have with each other. You've just changed the world to a degree. Thanks for joining. Peace and blessings. Have a wonderful day. Peace and blessings. I truly hope that you are enjoying Take Back Your Mind podcast. The Take Back Your Mind podcast is sponsored primarily by the Agape International Spiritual Center. In other words, everything that you see in terms of the staff that puts this together, the editing, the equipment, all of this is sponsored by our Agape International Spiritual Center. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm inviting you to support the sponsor. Support Agape. Simply go to agapelive.com and make a donation. And say in the donation that you are supporting the podcast. It allows us to keep broadcasting. It allows us to keep putting these magnificent moments together with these wonderful people that I get to interview. We keep having the possibility of updating the equipment that's necessary and providing the wonderful content that many of you are writing in and saying, I really love the podcast. Support the podcast. Support the sponsor. Agape International Spiritual Center. agapelive.com. You can also text to donate. You can text the word give to 424-321-6243 and put podcast so that we know that you're really supporting this wonderful podcast. Our secondary sponsor is AdaptoZen, ADAPTOZEN. This is my superfood greens. It's nutritionally dense because I teach spirit, mind, and body. We want our body temples to be healthy. So one of the products is my superfood greens. You can go to NutraRise.com. Those three little lines you see, you hit those three little lines and you'll see AdaptoZen. There's two products, my superfood greens and a product called Elevate, which are organic mushrooms for your health. You can put both in your smoothies so that you have main ingredients for the health of your body temple. These are our sponsors. Primary sponsor, Agape International Spiritual Center. Secondary sponsor, AdaptoZen. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be wise. Circulate and share. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in Taking Back Your Mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.